Chevy Vortec V8 GMT 800 trucks grease points. Here's every single one. Quick and easy. Check it out, guys. Talking about 2002 Chevy Avalanche, mini cat eye. Formerly abandoned. Y'all wanna check out that rebuild? Check it out, I'll link to it up here. 5.3 Vortec V8 engine, but there's no grease points up under here, you know, up under the hood, obviously. So in my opinion, there should be. Look right down here on steering shaft, there should be one right on here. You gotta grease this, so you gotta do it manually. There's no grease Zerk on there. If we go right down in here, there's a U-joint for the steering shaft. You gotta put grease on it. You gotta do it manually, there's no grease fitting. Grease goes bad in here, then guess what? You get vibrations in the steering wheel, big problem. So that's it for top side up here. Like I said, nothing really. Let's take a look underneath the chassis. So this is a two-wheel drive, same as a 4x4. It's got torsion bars. I'll show you where the grease points are. Let's take a look at the passenger side first. This is an Avalanche, so it has torsion bars. All right, so we're under the passenger side of the truck right here. You can see we have the control arms right here. Lower ball joint right here, grease fitting right there. Upper ball joint right here, there's a grease fitting on top of here. Outer tie rod, grease fitting up here. There's a grease fitting right here. And here's the actual pitman idler arm. There's a grease fitting on top of it right here. Here's where I was telling you to grease it earlier, right here, steering shaft. So the pitman idler arm system here. There's another grease fitting up there. You can see it comes out of the bottom of the steering box. It's right up there. Let's take a look at the driver's side. Come on over, we have that inner tie rod grease fitting right here. Now if we look down in here, we have the outer tie rod grease fitting, same as the other side. Lower ball joint, there's one on there. Upper ball joint, there's one up there too. Overview 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. All right, so I'm gonna show you how to grease them. So I just put my grease gun, you know, on the bottom ball joint like that. A couple squirts in there. Too much, you got problems. Too little, you got problems. Put about 2 or 3 squirts until the boot's a little plush, but it's not popped and running out. Lucas Red and Tacky in the gun. There you go, done. So you're gonna get in there, you're gonna pump them full of grease. The ball joints and the tie rod ends are the most important. Obviously, you don't want the ball joints to prematurely wear out. The boots are gonna pop. They're gonna get grease everywhere, might come out the side, might come out the bottom, might come out the top. It's gonna come out, it's normal, happens on every single one of these trucks I've worked on. Leave it alone. Don't try to swap the boot out, just pump it full of grease. Unless it's really blown out, like the side, leaking all over the place, it'll be all right. So that was the front suspension right here. We got the rear suspension right here. And yeah, there really isn't many grease points, if any, on the rear suspension. You know, it's all in the front. IFS, independent front suspension, all that stuff moving around. You gotta make sure it's lubricated. Let's take a look at the rear. So even on the Avalanche with all this extra suspension stuff, there are no grease points down here. You know, all the way over the axle, passenger side, driver's side, there's nothing. You know, you would think maybe these sway bar end link bushings would have a grease fitting on there. You know, put it in there, put a little grease in there, but they don't. You gotta pack them or get a needle and inject some grease up under there. That was easy. Let's take a look at a 2-wheel drive coil spring setup on the 2006 Chevrolet Cat's Eye. Take a look at the 2-wheel drive Cat Eye. Got a 4.8 Vortec V8 right here. Let's take a look at the passenger side on the Sylvie. All right, we got a lower ball joint right here. There's a grease fitting right here. Outer tie rod grease fitting right here. There's a grease fitting up here on the upper ball joint. Rack and pinion under here. There are no grease fittings on that. See what I'm talking about? The boot popping and it coming out. I see this all the time. Driver's side. So it's the driver's side. Lower ball joint grease fitting right here. Tie rod grease fitting right here. Upper ball joint grease fitting right here. Silverado passenger side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So on the drive shaft right here, I've seen this on some of them. We got a grease fitting up here. I believe there's a shaft in here, you know, splines, and it helps them slide back and forth. So here's a really good tip for you right here. This U-joint for the rear diff It doesn't have a grease Zerk on it right here from the factory for whatever reason. Get an aftermarket one. It's got a grease fitting on here. You know, you can grease them up. These, you got to wait till they break and replace it, or replace it before they break. You can't grease them like this from the factory, unfortunately. Same with that U-joint all the way up there. So if we take a look at the Avalanche drive shaft here, there's also no grease fitting, grease Zerk on the U-joint right here. So, you know, you can get an aftermarket one for this too. This has a different drive shaft. It's a one piece. It doesn't have that center support bearing, so there isn't a grease point in the middle of the truck up here like there is on the Silverado. That's a good upgrade for Avalanche too. Let's take a look at the rear. So on the rear axle of the Silverado, there is absolutely nothing to grease down here either. Same steering shaft right here, it goes down. I've already greased it. See, white lithium grease down in there, doesn't have a grease fitting. Put some grease in there. And then this steering shaft, some guys modify it, put a grease fitting there because it needs lubrication in there, but sometimes I just pack it with grease if I can get some up in there. So between these two boys right here, they're both two-wheel drives, but this has got the 4x4 suspension setup. It's got the torsion bars up front. Then of course, you know, this is a Silverado, so it's got those coil springs up front. The grease points are a little bit different. Same idea though, those grease points need grease, get in there and grease them. So the torsion bar suspension setup is my favorite. I think it rides better, I think it's stronger. It's a whole nother video. It needs more grease. Two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, doesn't matter, needs more grease. Then the coil spring setup. Let's get the Pitman idler arms up there. You know, it's got that big ol' tie rod, whatever you want to call it, going through the suspension from end to end. It needs a lot of grease up in there, way more than the coil spring setup, but I think it's better. Let's check out the grease gun I use. So here's the grease gun I use. I've been using this for years. It's done a good job. Normally, I use this flexible hose, especially on these Silverados. There's no telling what angles you'll have to get in there and get at. I got this one on there because this broke, sprung a leak on me. Don't recommend the little straight pipe here for greasing these trucks. Get you a flexible one with one of those new ends on there that locks onto the grease Zerks better than this style. You use one of those electric ones, the battery powered ones that go they go and they squirt grease in there. You might get too much. It's better to do it by hand because it takes so little grease to fill these boots on these trucks. You put too much, then you're really gonna pop the boots and squirt grease everywhere, then you got a big problem. So I just do it by hand, you know, with one of the hand pump ones. I use Lucas Red and Tanky. That's what I've used for years. Get in there, grease it up, lasts a long time, synthetic, you know. It really protects the ball joints and stuff like that. All right, y'all, that's it for the video. That's all the grease fittings. You know, this is for a two-wheel drive, Avalanche, Silverado. They're the same chassis, 4x4. It's just a little bit different. A couple more grease points, I believe, up near 4x4 stuff, but you get the idea. Don't forget to drop me a huge thumbs up down below. Subscribe for more Chevy tips in the future. I'll check you out on the next one. Later.